Welcome to another episode of Metal Mastermind. Today I'm going to show you how to mix your metal rhythm guitars using amp sims and get that nice full sound. Amp sims and plugins have come a long way over the past couple of years. They sound awesome. I mean, there are some amazing amp sims out there. In fact, almost every amp sim for metal guitar sounds great these days because the technology is just superior. However, there are still a lot of metal guitar players who prefer to record their guitar tracks using a live amp. And one of the main reasons for that is because the amp sims, they are almost perfect. They sound so pristine, so tight, and just flawless. So when you're recording your tracks with amp sims in the full mix, you may not feel like you're getting that raw, organic, authentic guitar tone. I'm going to show you how to solve that problem with just two simple little tricks that you can use in the studio with amp sims. Now, everything you hear in this video is going to be in the full mix because that's where it really matters the most, and we're going to use the Metal Mastermind theme song for these examples. First, let's just hear one guitar track using an amp sim by itself. At the end of the video, I'll share what amp sim I was using to get that tone you just heard. So that didn't sound too bad. I mean, it sounded tight, and again, you've just got a really nice polished guitar track. But we certainly don't want just one guitar track, and this is the first little trick here that I like to use when recording guitars in general, regardless of what I'm using, whether it's an amp sim or a real amp. We're going to record a second guitar track, and I've got kind of a little thing that I do with each track here that's going to make it sound a lot more awesome than what you just heard. So listen to this next track and then I'll share how I get this tone. Now, real quick, I didn't just duplicate the first guitar track to track number 2. I actually recorded 2 tracks, and there's a reason why you want to record these 2 tracks, not duplicate them. If you just duplicate the track, well, all you're doing is just increasing the volume. There's really nothing going on there. When you go back and record that second guitar track, it's going to be slightly different in some places than the first original track you recorded. So that creates some little nuances, and that's one of the secrets to making your guitar track sound more authentic and more organic. But there's something else I did, and this is all in step number 1 here. After I recorded the first track, I hard panned that track all the way to the left. So if you have your headphones on, you can only hear that track in your left speaker. When I opened up track number 2 to record that second rhythm guitar track, I went ahead and panned that all the way to the right. So now you have a true stereo effect. You've got one guitar in the left speaker and that second guitar is in the right speaker. And what that does is, first of all, it prevents things from getting muddy, because when you have guitars, all the guitars going up the middle, they can get a little muddy sounding. So splitting those off, having one in the left and then one in the right, gives you just this really nice balance in the mix. And with those little nuances, you can kind of hear some of those. Now, when I say nuances, it doesn't mean that your second guitar track should be way off from the first one. You want to get it as close and as tight as possible, but by default, there are still going to be some slight discrepancies in that second guitar track, and that's just going to make your mix sound more lively, more organic, more authentic. And when you pan those tracks, it even gives you a bigger and broader sound. Now, we could stop right there and we could be okay, but no, we're not done. There's one more little trick I want to show you, and this is going to help you further get that full and organic sound in your metal rhythm guitar mix here. So I want you to hear this track. Now you may think, well, it kind of sounds like the one I heard just before that, but it sounds a little bit better. There's just one simple thing that I did to just one of those guitar tracks. what I did was I created a slightly different tone for the guitar track, the second guitar track that I panned to the right. And all I did in this case is I just changed the virtual cabinet that I was using. And that gives me just a slight variation in the tone, which gives you that more organic metal rhythm guitar sound overall in the mix. You see, the problem is if both guitars sound exactly alike, it kind of sounds thin when you listen to it. So that second example that you heard might have sounded a little thin if you were listening to that in a really nice sound system, which I know most of us are listening on our phones or on our computer. But still, that's a little more thin, and I can especially tell in the studio. But when you make that slight change to that second guitar track, or whatever guitar track, doesn't matter. Just make a slight change to one of the guitar tracks. It could be changing the cabinet sim you're using. It could be just changing the mic sim. Maybe you're using the same amp, same cabinet, but you just switch mics for one of those guitar tracks. Just a slight variance is going to bring that track to life. It's going to bring that overall mix to life, and it's just going to sound extremely awesome. Now you might be thinking, well, Jason, maybe I could just change amps altogether. You can try that. That's definitely something you can do, and it's easy to do using amp sims and plugins and that sort of thing. You might have like a Mesa amp sim in one track, and you might want to try an Ingle or a 5150 in the other track and just see how that sounds. From my experience, that hasn't always turned out great. I prefer to use the same amp, but just change the cabinet and or the mic setting, the mic sim there, and that way it's still kind of the same sound, but there's enough variance between the two tones that it makes it sound more lively. But of course, feel free to try different amp sims. Why not? Try it and see if it sounds good to your ears. Of course, with amp sims and plugins, you have endless possibilities to do that. Now, as I promised, the amp sim that I'm using in this video here is actually Positive Grid's Bias Amp 2, and I'm using their 5153 MK2 amp, which I believe was obviously modeled after a 5150 amp. And this specific sim to me sounds really good for this style of metal that we're playing. Of course, you can use any amp sim. It almost doesn't matter these days because just about every amp sim out there today sounds amazing in its own right. So use whatever amp sim you have and just apply these methods that we talked about in this video. And I think that's going to really help you take your mix, your metal rhythm guitar mix, to that next level. And it's just going to sound more organic, more professional, but it's not going to sound overly polished and overly processed, if that makes sense. So I hope these tips helped you in this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and don't forget, we are giving away, Ken and I, we are giving away a free home studio guide. So there's a link in the description of this video. Download that. I promise that guide is going to help you tremendously, and you're going to learn so much through that free guide. So grab your copy of that, and please give this video a thumbs up. We're really trying to help as many metal musicians as possible on our Metal Mastermind channel.